Okay, hi everyone. Today's daf is Masechta.
Hi.
Yes, hi. Today's daf is Masechta Kiddushin Daf Pei, and we'll just finish right before the Mishnah. Right before the Mishnah on Daf Ayin Tes Omid Beis, we were Nema Haini Katanoi, Nema Kahani Tanoi. That's where we're up to. It's a very short piece till we get to the Mishnah, which is going to be a brand new topic. We're just finishing up the discussion over here regarding the machlokes between Rav and Shmuel. It's a fascinating case. We know that there is a day that a girl turns into an adult. That's 12 and a half, when she's exactly 12 and a half and 6 months. Let's say usually the girls at that time were turning right into adulthood. So on that day, the case is that her father took Kiddushin on her behalf. And then in the afternoon, she took Kiddushin on her own behalf, the girl. Now, the question was, they check her in the afternoon, and she's an adult. Could be in the morning she was still a nara, and the father had a right for the kedushin. So what do you do? So Rav said, no, you ignore the father's kedushin. She's an adult right now. Her father's kedushin was not valid, and her kedushin is the valid kedushin. But Shmuel said no. Maybe in the morning she was still a nara, and the father's kedushin, maybe not. Maybe she was not a nara, and only her kedushin is valid. So the Gemara says it's a machlokes between Rav and Shmuel. So now the Gemara says, but we have brises that say the same thing. Here's the brisa. One brisa says kitcha avia baderach. Her father was makabel kedushin on the road, and probably in the morning. The kitcha atzma be'ir, and she was makadesh, took kedushin on her own behalf. For herself in the city. Barei begeris, and we find right now she's an adult. So Tanachada, one brisa says exactly what Rav said. Harei begeris lefanenu. That is a begeris in front of us, and we ignore the father's kedushin. But Tanya idach, and the other brisa said, which was Shmuel's opinion, chayshina lekedushay shneim. We're concerned that maybe she was mekudeshes with her father's kedushin, or maybe not. Maybe she's kedushes with her kedushin. So she's going to need a get from both people. So, my love, would you say that Chad Kirav, Chad Kishmuel? One brisa went like Rav, and one brisa went like Shmuel. Answers the Gemara, no, Idi Kishmuel. Both brises go like Shmuel. But the din is what brisa says you ignore the father's kedushin. Kan b'mechashto. B'mechashto means that she's denying her father's. She tells her father, "What did you makabel kedushin for me? I know for a fact that I was already an adult the day before. So you have really no right to." So if she's denying it and she's, standing up for herself and telling everybody that she checked herself and that she was an adult, so then we would ignore the father's kedusha. Kan b'she'ein mechashta. But when are you concerned for both? When do you go with the uncertain? If she's not denying it. She's not denying it. So we don't know how to follow this. Says the name of, let us say, you just resolve that there's no machlokes in the brises, but maybe there's no machlokes Rav and Shmuel. They're talking about two different things. Rav was saying you ignore the father's kedushin is when b'mechashto, when she knows for certain she was an adult. And Shmuel says chayish l'kedusha shneim is only if we don't know. She wasn't certain in herself. She knows now she was an adult, but she doesn't know what happened in the morning. So would you say that Rav and Shmuel don't have an argument? So the Gemara concludes with Tizbra. Could you say such a thing? Rav Yosef, Rav Yosef, son of Rav Nashi from the Vil, paskin like Rav. The ikvit Shmuel, and Shmuel was angry. Va'amar, and he said, you paskin like Rav that you ignore the kedushin of the father. Everybody has a small jug on their head, and they rely on the rabbis. This Rav Yosef, he poured. It was poured in his head a lot of brains that he has the guts enough to say for certain that you ignore the father's kedushin. And where did he take the temerity to do that? I mean, I think that you could be chayish for kedusha shneim. So if you felt that Shmuel wasn't arguing, why was Shmuel angry? Maybe this guy, Rabbi Yosef, was paskening when the girl herself was denying and saying, I know for certain I was an adult in the morning. So my father had no right to Makabel Kedusha. Nevertheless, Shmuel was still angry. It must be that there is a machlekes between Rav and Shmuel that remains. Whether she denies it or not, Shmuel will always say that Yechayish the Kedusha Shneim. So the Gemara concludes, Amalei Mazut Ravashi, Hachi Amar, Meimei Hilchasek about Shmuel, the halacha is like Shmuel. Ravashi Amar Hilchasek Avasi the Rav, the halacha is like Rav, Hilchasek Avasi the Rav. So the halacha remains like Rav. So let's review with the opinion of the day that a girl turns 12 and a half, she turns into an adult. If she was Mekabel Kedushin for herself, but in the morning the father was Mekabel Kedushin also. And now we check her in the afternoon, and she's an adult. So we ignore the father's Kedushin as if it didn't happen. We don't assume she was an adult in the morning. We don't assume that she was a katana, a nara in the morning, but rather she was an adult the entire day. The father had no right to be Mekabel Kedushin, and the only thing that's valid, effective, is the Kedushin she was Mekabel on herself. New Mishnah, Ayin Testament Beis. New topic. Misha Yatzahu v'ishta l'Medina Siyam. Kohen went with his wife to Medina Siyam. Okay, we know they were happily married couple. They went to overseas. Then Uvahu v'ishta Yubanav. Then they come back. It's him and his wife and his son. Now he has a new son. So we can assume the son is it's a valid child, right? Maybe not. Maybe he adopted it in the overseas country. But the guy says, the Kohen says, this is my wife that went with me to Medina Siyam. This is her. This is her children. He doesn't have to reprove again that the woman that he's married to is a kosher woman, because the Kohen has to make sure that she's a miyuchas woman. And not on the child. He doesn't have to prove anything about the kid. If he says this is her kid, we trust him, because the Gemara is going to explain it's a baby kid that really is like clinging to the mother. And there's a chazaka if it's really her mother, his mother, or whatever, because the child is clinging to her. So he doesn't have to prove that it's not an adopted child. But Mesa, let's say he only brings a baby. And he says, "Ve'esa, my wife died overseas. Ve'ela b'nau, these are her children." So now we have to prove it. Maybe raya labanim, ve'ina maybe raya isha. He doesn't have to. He has to prove that the children were kosher children, because not on the isha, because she died, and the children, maybe he adopted these children. Let's say he comes back from Medina Siyam, and he said, "Ish nesasi Medina Siyam, harehuzi. This is my new wife. I took her overseas. Ve'ela b'nau, these are her children." So if the Kohen comes back here, in order for us to validate his wife and children, maybe Raya al Ishi has to prove that this is a kosher wife that he took overseas. And once he brings that, he doesn't have to say that these are her children, because if the kids again are clinging to her, it's automatic assuming that these are her children. So once he proves the Isha's validity, that she's a kosher woman, he doesn't have to reprove the children. But Mesa, if he says she died, the Elu Banam, these are her children, so he comes back. He was a single guy that went overseas. Then he comes back and says, I married overseas, my wife died overseas, and these are my kids. Sarach Lahavi Rayal Isha Valabani has to prove the woman and the child, because you have to prove that the woman that the one that you married was a kosher woman, and that these were the children of that kosher woman. So the Gemara says, so now, Amar Rabba Bar Huna said, when can you rely that you don't have to bring a proof on the child? The kulam bechruchen achreha. If you see the child is clinging towards this lady, that we can assume that is the chazaka. And it's a very important chazaka. It's a presumption that these are her children. So once we know she's kosher, even if we know nothing about this child, but if the children are clinging to her, then that's enough to prove that the child is a kosher child. Tanu Rabban, the rabbis taught. Ish Nasasi Medina Sayam. She says, I married a woman in Medina Sayam. So maybe Rayal Isha, you have to prove that the woman that you married was a kosher woman. You don't have to prove the children. Or maybe Rayal Gedolim. But let's say she has older children. So now these children are not clinging to her. So then you have to prove on the older adult children, and you don't have to prove the younger children. When was these said by one woman? So by one woman, you don't have to bring proof on the Banim Ketanim. All you have to prove is that this woman that you married in Medina Siyam was a kosher woman. Aval b'shtei nashim, but if there's two women, so then, and maybe Raya. Now, what happens with two women? He says he married two women, and he says one of them died, and these are their children. So then it could be that the one that died, the children now are clinging to the wife that's still around. So therefore, these may not be her children. They're just clinging because their mother died. Maybe Ra'al Isha Valabani, you have to bring a proof on the woman and on the children. Doesn't matter. Al Gedolim, adult children, Al Ketanim, on young children, because even if they're clinging to her, but maybe this was their mother died. So there was the other woman that bore these children, and they're just clinging to the remaining woman that's married to this guy. Of course, we only say this is if there was proof. People, Adam, came to say that, in Medina Siyam he married two women. Nu Gemara, Amar Resh Lakish said, we go to Amid Aleph, Pei Amid Aleph. Lo Yishanu wasn't taught Ela B'Kachei Gvul. The idea that you do not have to prove anything on the child. Remember, he's a Kohen, right? And he comes back with a woman with a clinging child. So he never proved the child, right? It's a chazaka that these children belong to her because they're clinging to the kosher mother. So then we allow them to eat truma. These kids grow up, they can eat truma. But ava b'yuchsin, to say that they can marry a Kohen, in other words, if they're girls, can they marry a Kohen? Maybe not. Maybe they're an adopted children. We're not going to rely on a chazaka to allow these to say automatically that they're kosher, and therefore they have to prove that really that they're the daughter of that woman. Rabbi Yochanan, even when it comes to yichus, the chazaka is good enough with yichus, and that's it. You don't have to check any further. If this baby girl is clinging to this lady, and we know the lady is a kosher lady, we can assume that this girl is her daughter, and that daughter is kosher to marry a Kohen. The Ozda Rabbi Yochanan goes according to his opinion. Malkin al chazakas. A chazaka is so strong, you could give malchus. Even if you don't have proof, you just have a presumptive status, you give malchus. And we're going to give you an example. Not only that, you can give skila and burn somebody alive just by a chazaka. But the ain sarfin truma al chazakas, burning truma because of a chazaka, we will not do that. So the Gemara explains all these things. Malkin al chazakas, you can give malchus just because of a chazaka. What's that case? Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda, you have a lady that those days the ladies used to put on special clothing when they were nida. Let's say a lady in those days would put on black clothing when they're nida, and she's walking around with this black clothing. We don't know for sure she's in nida, but she's walking around with the black clothing. And then we know for a fact that her husband had relations with her, and she says, "No, I was a tar lady." But the fact is that the husband had relations with a woman who was walking around with nida clothing. So with this chazaka that she always wear the nida clothing when she's a nida, the husband will get malchus nida. So we see that even though it's not a complete proof, we're going to give malchus based on the chazaka. Salkin v'sarfin al chazaka. We could give somebody skila and burn them alive when with just a chazaka. Like Rabbi Rav Huna said, Rabbi Rav Huna, ish v'isha. Listen to this: ish v'isha, a man and a woman. Tina v'tinoikis. They had a boy and a girl. So it's a four, regular American family: husband, wife, and a baby boy and a baby girl. Shehigdalu b'say chabayis. They grew up in the same house, so we can assume they're a family. Niskolin zalzat. They can get skila one for another. Let's say the son slept with the mother. They grow up, so we assume that this is the mother and that's the boy. If he sleeps with his mother, even though we don't have proof that this is her child, we're going to give them skila. V'nisrafin zelazat. We can burn them. If the father will sleep with the girl, with the daughter, we can assume that this is his father and this is his daughter. So we would give sreifa just on that chazaka because we saw them grow up together. We assume and we know for sure that they are just a family. Amar Rabba Shimon Pazar Meshum Levi Meshum Bar Kapara. Masa, there was this exact same story. Be'isha Shabas Yerushalayim. A woman came to Yerushalayim. V'tinok Murkav Al Kesefa, and she came. I don't know. She was a refugee running away from a country, and she came with a baby on her shoulder. And we found their living quarters, and they lived in Yerushalayim. Mother and son. Big Dilasa, and she raised him. Uvale, and at the end, he was Mazana with her. They brought him to Bezdin. They said, "You must be the mother. This must be the son." Uskalam, they gave skila. Not because they were for sure that this is his child. Because we have a chazaka. This kid was clinging to this lady when he was a baby. So it must be that this was his mother. And then, therefore, on that presumptive assumption, we gave him Malchus when he grew older and was Mizana with the lady who is presumed to be his mother. But ain't starfin truma al chazakas. The Amar Rab Shimon starfin al chazakas. Rabbi Yochanan Amar ain't sarfin. You would not burn a chazaka if you think that something that this piece of truma became tamei because of a chazaka. Rab Shimon ben Lakish says, Rish Lakish says, you would burn the truma. Rabbi Yochanan says, burning truma, that's going too far. We're not going to burn truma. Vazal tameo. They both go according to the reasoning. The time we learned in the Mishnah. This is the example. A little kid, by the way, is always considered to be a tamei little kid. Let's say a 6-year-old is tamei. Why? Because kids play in the garbage and they may have touched the sheretz. So let's say you have Tinak, a 6-year-old kid, nimsa b'tzad isa, that's found next to a piece of dough. Ubatza biyadin, the dough is in his hand. So he must have grabbed a piece of the dough and now playing with it. So he must have touched the dough. So is it? And let's say the dough is for truma. Rameya says it's tar. Rameya says it's tar. The Chachamim mitamin. Chachamim say it's tamei because the kid touches garbage, so he's tamei. He must have touched this dough. It's obvious he touched the dough. So the Chachamim say it's tamei. So the Gemara asks, we asked this question. My time with the Rameya. Why would Rameya say that the dough is tar? The kid must have touched it. So the answer is Kusava roiv tinokes mitapchims umiyat ein mitapchim. It's true that most children play in the garbage, but some of them don't, and therefore a little small minority are not tamei because they don't play in garbage. The isa becheskes tar oimedis, and according to Rameya, the dough, the presumptive status before you know something is wrong, it's tar. The miyat of the children that don't play with the garbage, the miyat of the children, the minority of the children are tar. To the chazaka of the isa, it is tar. Israel ruba. So then you weaken the roiv that most children are tamei, and therefore a mayor says that this case the dough will be tahar. Rabbanan says miyuta command you ignore the minority, you just look at the majority, and the majority is most kids are tamei kids. Ruba, most kids are tamei, and b'chazaka, and you have a presumptive status that the dough is tar. Ruba adif, you go after the majority. Amar Rish Lakish Mishum Rabbi Shaya. Rish Lakish said in the name of Rabbi Shaya, that is the case. According to Rabbanan, the dough is tamei because of a presumptive. You go after the chazaka. Rish Lakish says, "Who is to suffer less a truma?" We would burn truma based on this chazaka. Rabbi Yochanan says, "No, it's just a chazaka." So, "Einzu chazaka to suffer less truma." That's not a chazaka which we will burn truma because to burn truma based on a chazaka, that's too much. But it seems Rabbi Yochanan would say that there's some cases you would actually burn truma. Rabbi Yochanan would agree, even if it's only a chazaka, and that is the following case: Which chazaka would you burn truma? Now, the chazaka of is that you won't burn truma because you have a roiv going up against this chazaka. The roiv is that most kids play in the garbage and are tamei, but that's a roiv that's not in front of you. It's a roiv on generally children playing garbage. So therefore, it's a weaker type of roiv, and you will not burn the chametz. You will not burn the dough. But if the following case is a little bit different. We learned in the Mishnah. Isa you have a dough in a house, and you have shrotzim, which are tame types of rodents, utzvardeya, and frogs, metaplim sham. Right there, jumping around the house. You have shrotzim and svardim. And now they must have died onto this dough. And you find limbs or something like that, and you don't know, did it come from the shrotzim or did it come from svardim? But something is in this dough of rodent material. So in Rav shrotzim, if most of it comes from Tamea, then the dough is Tameh. If most of them come from Tzvardim, then it's Tahara. Then you go Tahara. So you see, if Roiv Shrotzim, if it's most Shrotzim, and you can count all the Shrotzim in this little kitchen over here, and to see that there's more Shrotzim than frogs, you would say it's Tameh, and you would burn this dough, even if it was Truma, because it's a rub that you could, a strong Roiv. Even in that case, even Rabbi Yochanan would agree that you would burn the truma. Now the Gemara just brings a raya, and then we'll get to a new topic in a new Mishnah. Tanya Kavasi Rabbi Yochanan, Shnei Devarim Ein Behem Das Lishoel, Basum Chacham Ki Yesh Lehem Das Lishoel. This is a brisa according to Rabbi Yochanan that will say that you don't always burn truma, even though you can assume that it's tamei, but you don't burn truma. You don't go that far, because the brisa says there are two things that. You can't ask. It's like they don't have. You can't ask them a question, and the Chachamim made them tamei as if you could ask them the question. In other words, normally Safek Tuma B'Rishus Hayachid is tamei, but if it happened with something that you can't ask the question, so then you would say Sveikei Tar. But sometimes they made it Sveikei Tamei. For example, Tinuk, the children playing next to that dough. Void the cheres in another case. Tinuk hada'aron, the kid playing next to the dough, we say that it is tamei, right? The brisa says, we said before, the tinuk playing next to the dough, Chachamim say that we assume the kid is tamei, and therefore the dough is tamei. Since the kid normally plays in the garbage, the dough is tamei. But v'oid acheres mai, there was another case. Isa b'soich chabayis. You have a dough in a house, v'tarnagolim umashkim tameim sham, and there are chickens there, and there's tummy water there. Now the assumption is that the tarnagol, the chicken, took a drink of the tummy water, and now v'nimtzu, we go to other days, nukurim isa. You see peck marks from the chicken in the dough. Well, maybe he took some of the tummy water and was now pecking the dough. Toilim. So even though you see the peck marks, you wouldn't burn that dough if it's truma. You don't eat it and don't burn it. And since the brisa says by this case it's toilim, by the tino case it's also toilet, you don't burn it. So that's the way Rabbi Yochanan interpreted what the Chachamim said before by doughs. Even though the Chachamim right away say it's tamei, but they don't say it's for sure tamei because it's not a roif. You'd only not eat it, not burn it, but you won't burn it. Rabbi Shmuel Levi, we're going to finish to the Mishnah, and then we'll start a new inyan. Rabbi Shmuel Levi, loishanu b'mashkin levenim. Only if there's clear water, white water, all right, then you presume that maybe he touched the water, and then the chicken played around with the dough. And how come you don't see water on the dough? Because it got swallowed in. But if it's red water, red tamei water, if the chicken played with that red water and then touched the dough, you would see red marks on the dough. If made the yadia, then you would certainly know. That's what Gemara is saying. If he played around with the water, then you would see red marks on the dough. Says the Gemara, how do you know? Maybe it played around with the red water, but then it touched the dough. But maybe the dough swallowed it up. Rabbi Yochanan said, you're right. I don't understand, because red, even though liquid red has a color red in it, but sometimes when you touch a dough, even the red will get swallowed into the dough, and you won't even know that somebody touched the dough with the red liquid. But Rabbi Yochanan said, that could only apply if it was clear water. It's so clear that you could see the reflection of a child. But if it's cloudy water, if there's a lot of like mist and sediment, even on colored water, then loy, then for sure the dough wouldn't be tameh, because that wouldn't get swallowed into the dough because it's so cloudy and full of sediment and it's colored. So if the chicken played around with that water and then pecked the dough, you would see it on the dough. And the fact that you don't see it on the dough, therefore the dough will be tahar. A new case, a new story in the Mishnah, new halachas. There's an Isser Yichud, okay? You're not allowed to be alone with a married lady, let's say. That's not your wife, obviously. So that could be a Daraisa, could be Pi Navi, whatever. But we're going to learn more about that in the Gemara. But the Mishnah says, Lo Yisyachid Odam, one man should not be im shtei nashim, with two ladies. Why? Because with two ladies, you can convince both of them to do znus with you. So then there's an Isser Yichud for one man with two ladies, right? Aval Isha Achas, one lady, Misyachedes im shnei anashim. One lady could have Yichud with two men. That's okay. Reb Shimon said, Af ish echad misyached im shtei anashim. Even one person could have could be misyached with two ladies. It's one man with one lady. That's also Reb Shimon's lenient and says, but one man with two ladies, that's permitted. Now we're going to learn like Taisus over here. But bisman sheish te'imay, if your wife is with you, so then you don't have a problem with many ladies. One because his wife watches over him. It's dafki your wife can watch over you, but not your daughter or sister. So bisman sheish te'imay, the yashin imahem bepudigi, you could be with many ladies in the same hotel room. Because your wife will always watch you. So therefore, there's a heter that as your wife can watch you, even if there's two ladies there. Misyachid Adam im imay v'imbita, a person could have yichud, be alone with his mother or his daughter. The yashin imohem, and he could sleep with them when they're young, right? The keir basa, you could sleep with your daughter, touching her body when she's a young kid. V'im higdilui, but if they get adult, you're allowed to sleep with them in the same room. This one, each one sleeps with their own pajamas. And this one sleeps with their pajamas. So we're going to just do just one more line. My Tama, what's the reason? Why can't one man be alone with two ladies? Maybe the yichud is only with one lady. Tana de Be'elio, because women are more gullible, and you probably can. The man probably could convince both ladies to be mizana with him, and that each one is not going to divulge that. So therefore, they answered one man with two ladies. Minohani mili, how do you know that that there's an Isser Yichud in the Torah? Okay, so the Gemara says, how do you know there's an Isser Yichud in the Torah? Shenema, because the pasuk says, Ki sischa achicha beni mecha. The Torah says that be careful that your brother, who's the son of your mother, does not convince you to do avodah zarah. Now, why does the Torah stress that this brother is the son of your mother? Ben of should you be only afraid of your brother from your mother, but not the brother from your father? Why does the Torah give the example of don't be convinced to do avodah zarah, even if your brother from your mother's side tries to convince you to do avodah zarah? So the pasuk is telling you that the son, it's teaching you an idea. Ben misyachin imimoy. The son could always be around his mother, and therefore the son can always be around his mother. That son is the brother that you'll always come encounter. So therefore, if the Torah tells you that a son could be with his mother, it must be that a regular person cannot be with other. You can't be with any of the Arayos in Torah. It's only the Torah gave you a son with a mother. One last line, Pashti Dekra b'may ksiv. But what is the pasuk really trying to tell you? The simple reading of the pasuk. Why should you be more concerned of the brother of your mother than the brother of your father? Amar Abaya, loy mibaya kama. It doesn't have to say it. Loy mibaya ben av. You certainly don't listen to the brother from your father, the son-in-law, because he hates you. He's going to give you bad advice. Why does he hate you? Because you're sharing the Yerusha with him. So he's going to try to convince you to do avodah zarah. Certainly you're not going to listen to him. But even if your brother from your mother, which deloisenally, he has no reason to hate you. And maybe if he's convinced you to do avodah zarah, the Torah was concerned, you're going to listen to him because he's the brother that really likes you. You share a common mother, and he has no reason to hate you because you're not sharing the Yerusha. Kamash Mulam, the Torah teaches, don't listen to that brother. But the point over here that the Gemara brought this all in, because the Gemara wanted to find remez. How do you know that it's usher for a man to be miyached with the arayas, to be alone in a room with any of the arayas? And the Gemara says it's a remez. It could be, it means it's midaraisa, or maybe it's just a durabanan, but it's a real source of where the Isser Yichud comes from. Okay, we'll stop over here.